Just got a question to follow up from that, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question in relation to Senator Xenophon. He did mention about what is the oversight mechanism in relation to operations of the Australian Federal Police. Would you agree with the statement that the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Law Enforcement has a particular direct oversight of the Australian Federal Police and can ask these sort of questions in camera as well as in public session?
Yes, they do, Senator. And look, there's been quite substantial evidence provided in camera about the sort of covert and other activities that the AFP and other law enforcement agencies do undertake for the advice of Parliament.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Mr Wilkins, we just got a query from Senator Madigan in relation to the number of people who have been extradited. Is that your department can answer that question rather than the AFP?
The people who dealt with that were here last night, but you wanted in Group 3, right?
That's Group 3, so you'd have to probably put that question on notice.
If you put it on notice, I think, Senator, would be the best idea.
Sure. All right, let's go to Senator Ludlam then now.
Thanks, Chair. Commissioner, thanks for joining us. Look, just before I kick off, Chair, I might just seek your advice as to when would be an appropriate time to just ask a general question of the department by way of follow-up. Should I do that later in the day or can that be done now?
We're on at 6 o'clock, I think, or 6:30.
You up again at 6?
What group is this that you want to ask about?
So it's a question relating, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put these questions to the Commissioner because they're related, but then I've got one that's much more general to the department and then we'll work out what's the most appropriate
Is that
time.
the group that we dealt with last night?
Possibly,
last
yeah.
night?
That's what I'm seeking guidance on.
Well, we should take that on notice now, Senator.
Give us an idea of what the topic is
about. It's relating to uses of Section 313 of the Telecommunications Act to block websites. Commissioner Negus is doing so at the moment.
People here last night to answer these questions, and that could have been raised then.
Is that also outcome
That's outcome 3?
I'll explain the context, but maybe I'll just do it in a moment. I've been referred here by another agency who refused to answer a question and said I should talk to the Attorney General's Department. But let's come back to it, and it might be disclosed as we go. Commissioner, the Federal Police uses Section 313 notices under the Telecommunications Act to compel internet service providers to knock out a subset of content listed by Interpol, their so-called worst of list. And maybe you want to just track back for us the history of when you first started issuing those and how you think that process is going.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'll again pass to Deputy Commissioner Phelan, who's in charge of our high-tech crime operations area, which again monitors these things.
Thank you, Senator. The information that I've got here is the first time that we started to issue 313 notices, specifically in relation to blocking websites. It was in relation to the Interpol worst of list is 24th of June 2011.
Okay. To your knowledge, has the AFP used those notices in that way before to knock content out? I shouldn't say use notices. Use that section or powers authorised under that section of the Act to knock content out of websites?
Yes, we have. Previously, we've used Section 313 as part of the mitigation strategies from the Joint Banking and Finance team within the Australian High-Tech Crime Centre, commenced in about May of 2004. So those were traditionally used to block foreign IPs hosting muling, phishing and other malware sites.
Okay. So that's not really so much about knocking content out, is it? That's if there's malicious software that's emanating from a particular server.
So, yes, that's right.
All right. Is there anywhere, I don't know whether this would be in an annual report or where I would find just a little bit of background on the history of the sort of activities that section of the Act has been used for? That was my inclination, was that it had been used in that way. But can we find how many of these notices are issued in an average year since 2004, for example?
Since I'm not sure, Senator, where we would actually have that information. Yeah. We don't keep records generally around that. Ever since we've aggregated it up in relation to the high-tech crime area in relation to child exploitation material, we've got very distinct numbers of how many we've done in that period of time.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to get a sense of how else the Federal Police uses these notices, because now it appears that ASIC and one other agency, who I'm seeking to find out from within this room who that is, are using them. So I'm just trying to get a sort of constrained idea of how the Federal Police uses them.
Okay. Senator, Section 313, of course, is not limited to blocking websites.
No, absolutely.
It is a power of course, that or a requirement that content service providers or ISPs or telecommunications carriers do everything in their power to assist law enforcement and stop offences against the criminal law. So it's not only about blocking websites. The Australian Federal Police does use that power or that section for other requirements that we do have that are not related at all to blocking websites. As a matter of fact, they have nothing to do with websites. They're about carriers assisting the AFP in lawful duties under warrant, etc. And there, to be quite honest, I don't really want to go into that particular component. That is, it's a very sensitive operational material.
Yeah, I'm actually not seeking to dig into that. I'm seeking more information on the rather more novel use of that section of that Act to take out content, which you've just told us, I think, you first started doing against the Interpol list a year or so ago.
Yes.
Before that, to your knowledge, had the Federal Police used that section of that Act to knock content out, or was it being used more for these rather broader array of activities that you're describing now?
No, it was mostly used for the blocking of the content. But having said that, in relation to malware and all those sort of things, we've stopped using it for that purpose.
Why is that?
Because it's not an efficient method of doing it. We've found that over time it's much more useful and, in fact, far more valuable to actually get in contact with those that are hosting the material and so on and block it at the source and get them to just tear down the sites and so on offshore and working with the various companies and countries that actually own the domains. And that's a far more useful method than trying to block it from here. And when we block here, we block a particular domain. We don't go for the IP address. Because
that was where ASIC's gone and tied their own shoelaces together and overblocked about 1,200 sites. So as far as you know, in terms of content, of knocking content away, because this didn't attract a huge amount of controversy when it was announced, or the only time that you would use those notices in that way is to block against the Interpol list?
Absolutely, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Just as an aside, how well do you think that is working? Have you noted any hiccups or hitches in the administration of that scheme?
No, the advice we've got from the ISPs is it hasn't slowed down their sites at all, or any of the, we've got no complaints from them. Obviously, they're all at different stages for the ones we've sent notices to about where they're at in terms of blocking content. Some helping with, they're at technical stage and others are working through what they need to do. But we've had no complaints so far. And I may also add that we haven't had a discernible increase in the number of referrals either.
Okay.
But the way it works, of course, is what it does is off the Interpol worst of worst list, the sites themselves, it redirects someone who tries to access those sites to it as the Interpol site. That's the way the AFP works.
Yep, no, I'm familiar with that. Now, ASIC is using these notices to knock out certain categories of sites, and there's an overblocking instance. There is one other agency, I was just told before by the Minister of Communications, there's one other agency within the Attorney General's portfolio also using these notices. Could somebody at the table illuminate me as to who that is?
Sorry, we don't comment on national security matters, Senator.
So it's a national security agency?
We don't comment on those matters.
So it's a national security agency?
We don't comment on those matters, Senator.
You are commenting. You just told me it's a national security matter.
No, he said he wasn't commenting on it.
Well, I didn't ask whether it was a national security. Somebody within the Attorney General's portfolio, which is significantly broader than national security, is using Section 313 notices to knock content off the web.
It is a national security matter. We're not commenting on it, Senator.
All right, that's been very useful. Thank you, Mr Wilkins. So back to the AFP. ASIC and one other national security agency is using these notices to knock out particular categories of content. I won't comment on this agency, which won't be named for some reason, but as far as ASIC is concerned, this content's unlawful and has therefore been knocked out for that reason. Is the AFP consider the use of these notices for other forms of unlawful content, whether it be, I don't know, copyright infringement, or you probably take a pick of all sorts of material, that these notices would be used to take that content out, and if not, why not?
Short answer is no. Senator, we don't have plans.
Why is that?
And that.
There's content out there that you know to be illegal, you know other agencies are using these notices to compel them to be taken down. Why would you not use them in that way? I'm not inviting you to, I'm just wanting to know what the rationale is as to why you're not.
Well, In my view, what we're trying to do here, Senator, is we're trying to do what we can to stop the abhorrent at this stage. Obviously, the crimes of child exploitation, and we're doing everything we possibly can that's lawfully available to us to do everything in relation to this.
And this is one of those
we
measures.
we obviously can't prosecute everybody, so this is about trying to stop it at the source, and that is so that people don't even have access to the site.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that it's labour intensive from our point of view. I mean, so at this stage we are concentrating our efforts on that particular crime type because we think it's effective.
Okay.
And not only that, I might add that there's a fair bit of rigour that goes around what sites to block.
I think you'll find that's why there hasn't been a huge amount of controversy over the practice of blocking.
And I think that's part of what you're saying, Senator. There's a lot of rigour that goes around which sites to block here. Blocking a site is not just a routine thing to do. It's a very important step and something that we don't take lightly. And therefore, there's a lot of rigour around it, and that's why we pursue it in relation to child exploitation material.
It's not entirely the question I put to you, though. Is the only reason why you're not using it to knock out other categories of sites as you would appear to be lawfully enabled to do?
No particular reason, I suppose, Senator. If we wanted to block those sites and it was within our power, I suppose we could.
Well, I'm telling you it is within your power.
Yeah.
It appears on my reading of the law to be entirely within your power. You're choosing not to.
Sorry?
You're choosing not to.
Well, we're choosing not to. We're choosing to do it on the other sites, I suppose.
You're choosing not to do it for other categories of sites.
And
I'm not trying to entrap you here. It's just my fair, plain English reading of it.
Yeah, in law enforcement, there are many conscious decisions one has to make.
Understood.
To do everything. Search warrants on all sorts of crime types. We can't do everything to everybody. And in this stage, we've made a very conscious decision that we're going to use these rather intrusive powers to do this thing at this stage.
Got it. Thanks very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you.